This is gonna be fun. A lot of these questions are things that I think are good. These are good questions.
I
have things to say about these.
I think it's funny because like I feel like last week was very like the first two episodes are very advicey, and I think the probably like I like they're gonna be fun. I think the more like the writing stuff, especially about like character dynamics and plot stuff, I think those are gonna be super fun to talk about and answer.
Mm-hmm.
Get into opinions about shit. That's not.
Now I can tell you my opinions and not advice.
That's not just take care of your wrists and. Oh man, I've been recording for a couple of minutes now, probably.
Oh, what? Really?
I wasn't sure when we were gonna be able to jump into it, and we just kept talking about questions and stuff.
This keeps happening.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're never getting a warning. We've established that in canon. In the canon of the podcast, we've established...
in the Speech Bubbles canon.
...that you don't get a warning. Did Amber, are you still here?
Are you ready, Amber?
I'm ready. Are we getting a 3-2-1 this time?
No. Okay. We're never getting a 3-2-1, apparently.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, alright.
Whenever you introduce yourself.
You're right. Hello, and welcome to Speech Bubbles, a webcomic podcast by people who do webcomics for people who want to make webcomics. I'm Brent, I do the webcomic Paradise.
I'm Amber, I do the webcomic Backlash.
And I'm Jeff, and I do the webcomic Firearm.
With a Y.
Damn it, I was gonna like...
I was waiting for you to say it!
I don't want it to be a catchphrase, but I guess it is now, so
You
You did it for the first two, you're stuck, man.
Yeah, no, that's part of the tagline now. It's Firearm with a Y.
The same way this time. I'm just telling you ahead of time.
But the Y is not where you'd expect. And this week on Speech Bubbles, we're talking about Protagonists, which, yeah, if you're writing a story that's got characters in it, you kind of have one of these, I would imagine, unless you're writing a story about like. I actually don't know if I can think of a story that doesn't have a protagonist in it.
Yeah.
A nature documentary, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
How it's made? I don't know.
That's a good question. Hey, what defines a protagonist, you guys?
It's the story. Well, if they're to be considered a protagonist, I guess the story has to be at least told or kind of framed through their point of view, through that character or entity's point of view. I think a lot of people kind of confuse this with good guy, bad guy, which, I mean, that's a good example, but I think that kind of paints your protagonists in a box that they have to be, a certain way.
I like to think of it more of like the protagonist is the character or entity that carries the audience through a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they can be bad or good or morally in between, like, really.
Yeah.
Be anything. So, what makes a good protagonist then?
Depends on this kind of story you're telling.
Well, that is indeed the pickle.
I was gonna say, oh man, I feel like we all have like a lot of opinions on protagonists. I'm trying to think of an organic way to talk about them before jumping into questions, but I also don't want to like step on anything we might answer in the questions. Because we got some good questions, and we're really excited to talk about them.
Maybe we should just jump to the questions, and if we have time, talk about it afterward.
I think that's more than fair. All right. First question from @DaFluffyTZombie. How to write balanced protagonists. And we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Balance is a little bit of a kind of a vague word. What do you guys consider a balanced protagonist?
Well, things I always look for in like balanced protagonists or the first thing I think of is like, you know, you don't want your protagonist to be like a perfect goody two shoes that doesn't struggle. So you want, like, I always look for a protagonist that like has faults and problems that they need to overcome, and like personal growth that they might have to go through. Like, I don't want them to be the end game perfect protagonist where you have to work for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that maybe a good balanced protagonist, such a weird way to phrase it, is maybe have something that the reader can relate to on whether a personal or just objective level, so that you can connect to that protagonist a bit better.
I don't know, man. I like my protagonist not balanced. I like my protagonists horribly flawed in one way or another. I'm trying to. It's and it really depends on the meaning of balanced. Like whether or not you mean like in like power to relation to the other characters in the story, or just like all around. I think balanced protagonist. I think like Mario. Like Mario's is your balanced character. He's not overly fast. He's not overly strong. He can jump high, I guess.
He doesn't say a word.
Do you have opinions on Mario's protagonist? No, Jeff, you can't say "let's go" because if you do, Nintendo will own our podcast.
Oh, that's right.
We'll get sued.
But yeah, no, I mean that's what I think of in terms of like, I don't know.
I'm really thinking on this word balance here. I'm like, I think that maybe when they mean by balanced characters, like someone who isn't overtly always the central figure, but is there enough to carry the weight of the story and push it forward without it becoming needlessly, I don't know. It's a really weird word.
I think we should just
maybe as we go through some of these little kind of what we were thinking about with protagonists will come to light.
Yeah.
Jeff, why don't you read this next question?
Oh boy, alright. Okay. From Cinerus Koala, I think I said that right. How would you go about writing a protag that is a jerk or callous, but still get readers to care about and root for them? I would say, I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I would say that maybe having some form of humanity. I mean, any character can be a jerk, and any character can be like super mean or just horrible. But I think if there's some way you can kind of relate to them and understand how they got there, that might actually make them a bit more intriguing and pull the reader in to be like, oh, okay, I can see why you're doing this thing. I guess I can let it pass maybe that you're doing these horrible things and just see why you're doing these horrible things.
Honestly, I don't even think it needs to be like that deep. As someone who's I would label the protagonist of my comic a jerk or callous, I think a lot of it can come down to framing, really, how you frame the story. Because God, I don't want to talk about like my comic at length on the podcast, where I feel like we should be like a little, I don't know, vague or something, but like whatever. If you've read my comic, my protagonist is kind of a jerk. She's really loud and obnoxious and goes around just kind of shoving people and doing what she wants. But I use like framing and like established tropes to kind of like put these in a different light. And so instead you have people rooting for her because she's like a badass, I guess. It's weird. It sounds like I'm tricking people. It sounds like I'm trying to pull one over on people, put it that way. But yeah, like you can use framing to be like, this person is a jerk, but people will still root for them anyway. I don't know. What do you think, Amber?
I think when it comes to having a character that's like a jerk or mean or just not like lawful good, the way to like a good way just to get them, like the audience to like them, I think comes down to a lot of like you portraying their struggles and what they want. For example, like if you have like a character who is portrayed as like a villain and like, yeah, they're like a big jerk and they're like evil, blah blah blah, like usually they like don't really get punished for being a jerk, or they're just handed things and they're not really likable. But like if you're doing it with the protagonist, usually they'll like be kind of struggling with things, or they like are working towards something. Like just I think giving your protagonist something to work towards, whether or not they're a jerk or not, will make them more likable because you're watching them struggle through and like get to something, or like whether it's like a plot device, like a big part of the story, or if it's like a personal growth thing, like, oh, I don't know how to interact with other people because I've never had to care about like other people before, but now I have other people's feelings to like take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm trying to think of like examples of like jerk main characters, and I actually don't really have a lot for like webcomics that I read. They're all in like
shows and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Making like any like quote unquote bad guy your protagonist, and also having the audience want to root for them is really tough. A lot of times you end up with these characters who are not so bad. They're like bad in like aesthetic, and like maybe they're a little chaotic and work outside the established laws of the universe, but like they're not like bad people.
They'll inevitably have something that's like humanizing or makes you like them. Like they're not like, I'll go blow up a hospital. Like they don't do stuff like that. It's usually like something a little less extreme.
Or it's Breaking Bad.
Or it's Breaking Bad.
in which you're actively not rooting for the protagonist. Then I'm not going to say any spoilers. I don't care how long it's been out. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad,
I haven't seen it. Please don't spoil it.
I will not spoil you because it's probably one of my favorite shows of all time. But the entire arc of that protagonist is getting you to actively root against them, and maybe that's what you want in a jerk or a callous protagonist. Unless you're going for like a jerk with a heart of gold archetype, maybe you want the audience to hate your protagonist, and I think a lot of that depends on the story you want to tell.
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to make your protagonist a jerk, though, if that's what you want to do. Don't be afraid to do that, because I'll like them.
Those are my favorites.
Those are my favorite ones, like people that have not very much like consideration for other people, and like, you know, I like that in characters in general, and when they're the protags, I just get really excited. Let's move on ahead then. Question from @JugumPuppet. What are your favorite types of protagonists? I personally love those who cause evil because they can, not because of their backstory. My favorite types of protagonists are jerks.
What are so like some of your guys' favorite protagonists in fiction, in like comics and shows and stuff? Because I've been like looking at this question, trying to be like, what? Well, I know what my favorite types are. I would be like, you know, arguably like the same. Amber is like, you know, kind of like jerks with a heart of gold, or jerks with like a good streak. But I'm trying to think of like actual examples of like protagonists that I really enjoy in fiction. And I've been trying to think about that. What are your guys's?
Part of my problem with this is that my favorite characters in series are usually supporting protagonists or the bad guys. Like the main protagonist is usually not my favorite character in a series. Not that I don't like them, but usually it's like, yeah, I like the protagonist, but these other characters are allowed to get away with so much more in this series, you know.
They're outshined by this like they're outshined by all the other characters in the series because of this kind of technique where you make your protagonist super bland a lot of times.
Looking at you, anime.
It's just most anime in general. Luffy.
Luffy
is a good protagonist.
I do like Luffy a lot. I love that like unstoppable fire, like violently protective of things that they decide to be protective of, and will do anything to get their goal. I'm like, yeah, go kid. Go
He's
be the
not.
pirate
Yeah, he's
king.
not bland. He's like this dumb, indestructible, like. But he's like selfless and selfish at the same time. He's a good. Jeff, have you read or watched One Piece at all?
I've read like.
Oh right, yeah, you're like in the early chapters.
I'm still like really early, and I'm sorry. I've just been thinking here, like on this question, like
Do you have you? Can you think of any?
I have a favorite type. I don't know if I can necessarily. I'm having a hard time too pinning down exactly like a character in fiction. But my favorite types of protagonists are either the ones that are like really sassy, and they just love having fun and playing with like other characters and just
like
messing with them. Kind of like
Spider-Man. Or your Matt Murdock's.
Yeah, kind of. And then like, I also like the protagonists that are also kind of a bit more stoic, and they know their shit. They just don't show a lot of that. It's a mystery to uncover. Like what kind of character are you? What have you gone through that makes you this way?
Ooh, yeah. An example I could think of with that is like you know the like. Have you guys seen Mushishi?
No,
I haven't.
Ginkgo is the main character of Mushishi. I love Ginkgo, and he's like mysterious and like knows a lot about a lot of things, and he's like, I don't know, he's like trustworthy, but he's also just like, well, I don't understand where you're coming from or who are you or whatever, but like it's like a whisper on the wind. Like he's very cool. Rule of cool is important too. Like is this protagonist just like freaking heck yeah, sweet? Okay, you're good. Check mark.
I will add this to my reading list.
Oh please, Mushishi's so good. Man, I'm trying to think of good protagonists that like ones that are just like the main character.
I don't know if either of you guys have any JoJo's Bizarre Adventure experience.
I don't know.
But like because it tells stories in arcs over generations and stuff, it kind of runs the gambit on protagonists. Like you have your first guy who's kind of this like it's you like the first guy because you think back on him fondly, and he's like, but like in story he's this kind of like boring, super strong, heroic, noble guy. And then the second guy comes in and he's like sassy kind of he's always tricking people and telling bad jokes, and he's really selfish and he's really great. And then the third guy comes in and he's like a stoic, kind of like stone-faced badass who just beats the shit out of people. And the fourth guy comes in and he's like this thug archetype, but he's got like a heart of gold. That's actually a really good example of like, I don't know, how your main character can shift with the story and the sort of deal. I don't know. I love JoJo's a lot. It's got really like every one of your Joes, as they are have their own kind of different flavor that they bring to the story. It's good. You guys should watch it.
Oh, well,
it's on my list. I swear, it's been recommended to me every other day.
I understand people when they're like, I can't get through the first part. It's real old. And
that's me.
Yeah.
A lot of my like favorite protagonists of stuff, it's like they're my favorite, and then I look at like the vast majority of like people who like normal protagonists, and I'm like, you probably wouldn't like this. Like Jack from He Never Died. One of my favorite protagonists in anything. That movie is so good, and he is just like a scary cannibal man, and I love him. And you end up rooting for him and liking him because he's like has that mysterious quality about him. He's like cool and funny in like a weird. He doesn't really mesh with other human beings very well. And then he's also like he's like a jerk and selfish, but you care about him because he's like he just seems so tired. He's just so tired.
He also does carry the he carries the story a little. There's like
he does
4 other characters in that movie, I think, and they're all those are the stories where I end up thinking of the protagonist as my favorite character. Is those stories that are essentially a character study of one person. They're usually kind of like drama or thriller. There's like maybe 3 or 4 other characters, and those characters might be cool. I like a lot of the characters in He Never Died. I like the antagonist a lot.
Yeah.
But sometimes I end up feeling like I like the protagonist by default, because there's like the supporting cast is, because I'm like you, as soon as like your comedic relief character comes on screen, or as soon as like your villain comes on screen, I'm like, okay, I like the protagonist a lot. As long as I like the protagonist is very rarely my favorite character in the story.
What usually happens with me, and like maybe I'll use specifically the example of Overlord, the anime series.
Oh man,
Overlord, main character, is an evil, like a chaotic evil Lich King skeleton monster, and he like is overpowered and not like, he's like a final boss, but he's the main character. And that kind of character is usually like my number one favorite character. Like, oh my gosh, finally they showed up. Because he's the main character, it's like, you filled my quota, so now I'm allowed to like characters that I normally wouldn't like. Like, so now I'm like, ooh, I also really like these side characters, even though my favorite type of character is the main character. Like, I don't feel like, I don't know when the next time I'm going to get this character is going to be, so I don't have to like latch on to him because he's the main character. So I'm just like, I can explore other character types now.
Overlord also kind of accomplishes that thing of like, the protagonist is kind of a morally gray, leaning towards bad, you know, but in order to kind of get you to relate to him, he cares about the subjects in his kingdom. But the subjects in his kingdom are also bad guys. So it's like, you give him that humanity. You give him that humanity because he cares for his like NPCs, but they're all still bad guys. So it still accomplishes that like antagonistic protagonist. Man, Overlord was good.
Overlord's good. Watch it. It's like he has that antagonistic thing, but like he has the humanity with his subjects, but he actually has like a crisis of like, I don't have any humanity anymore, like for human being, like he sees human beings as like insects to be crushed. Like he's like, I'm not a good person. It's like really interesting. It's good. Please watch it.
I like how anytime like 2 of us have seen something or read something and the other one hasn't, it's just us talking for like 5 minutes, and then the third one is like, okay, I'll read it or watch it. Man, I hope people listening have like also read and watched the same things we have, because some of our examples might have flown over some heads.
Kind of obscure stuff here. We're not even doing like big ones like Superman or like.
Oh man, I could talk about Superman as a protagonist for a bit, but I won't. I'm gonna read the next question.
Okay.
From @Urethra Punisher. So, do you think you should completely flesh out a character or allow them room to change and grow as you make of the story? And that is I think you should do both. Does that
You should know where they're going.
Yeah.
Don't have them be the end game version of themselves. Put them at like an earlier point in their self-growth timeline and have them work through it as they go through the story.
Yeah, I think going back to like favorite types of protagonists, a lot of my favorite protagonists are dynamic in that they change over the course of the story. Although there is merit in having a protagonist who is like unflinchingly the same in a like they don't change. I think
like Luffy.
Yeah, Luffy is always this unstoppable idiot. He's gonna be the Pirate King. Or you have like Guts from Berserk, who's always gonna struggle and he's always gonna fight forever. Wolverine is usually pretty much the same. Although I haven't seen Logan, I've heard that it's good.
I want to see Logan so bad.
I think I was thinking on this question before, and I think a good way to like maybe work out, because it sounds like maybe they're, and I don't want to make an assumption here, but it sounds like they're maybe a little bit unsure on like how far they should flesh out their character before they start going with the story, or if they should just do it as they go along. And I think in that vein, it's a good way to kind of work out what your character's going to do and how they're going to react to certain situations is to put them in mock situations, like whether difficult or intense social stuff, or maybe something a bit more physically harming. Just kind of practicing to being in their head and seeing how they would react and do certain things. And I think that's where RPing kind of helps a lot in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Can't tell you how many times I did like a I made a character for a specific thing and then like RP'd it out and it was like, nope, they're different now.
Oh, that's what happens every time I play a new tabletop game. I definitely think that you should know, like, this is kind of how I am with like writing your stories in general. You should know where you're building to. Everything that you do should be like pointing to a direction so that it feels like ground is getting tread in your stories. Same with your characters. Like, especially your main character, you should know, like, if they're going to stay the same for the whole time. Okay, that's something you should know. If you should know if there's going to be an event that, like, drastically changes their worldview, or, like, if they start, like, slowly changing over the course of the story. Like, you should probably know that so that you can be excited for that character growth that you're plotting.
All right.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything else we can add to that.
Yeah.
So from at Precognitional, how do you avoid Mary Sue and special snowflake vibes for your protagonists?
Ooh. This is something that I feel like a lot of people are like afraid of. There's like a new thing on the internet where it's like witch hunt for Mary Sue's, which I disagree with.
I think you can, like, honestly, like, and the rule of anything in art is you can make anything good if you're good at it. I think people are, I think you can avoid this problem by giving them flaws and problems. What people think of when they think of Mary Sue is like, this is like a space princess who's, you know, half werewolf and like one eye is a different color than the other, and she's got a sword that can kill anything in one hit and whatever. And even in certain kind of stories, that can still work if your character has some kind of flaw or something to make that interesting. I don't think your Mary Sue vibes are necessarily a bad thing. What do you guys think?
I think the first thing I think of when you say Mary Sue is Ichigo from Bleach. And, you know, see how far that series got with their Mary Sue protagonist. So
that's so true.
Sorry, he's 100% the biggest Mary Sue I've ever seen in an actual work of fiction.
Bleach also has 250,000 other characters to carry the story, though, when Ichigo's not around.
Like, Ichigo just comes in, and when he's not around, you're like, I care about everyone else.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think that having them struggle would probably kind of, like, actually struggle, and maybe even sometimes lose, is one way to kind of put them in the different category, because Mary Sue's just someone who can do anything. If it's a character who actually cannot do this or that thing and has a hard time even trying it, then it kind of adds a bit more of a layer to that character. Like going back to your werewolf one-hit killer star princess, you could just give her maybe she has like a bipolar complex or something, because she has the werewolf situation going on, and maybe sometimes she gets very aggressive and she can't control it, or maybe she has a hard time in certain parts of this space universe and she can't go there because of something or other has to do with her backstory. Like, it's really just a matter of finding a way to make that character struggle and not be able to fix everything with just like, aha, I have a solution.
And don't, like, when you're giving your characters flaws, avoid giving, like, oh, I need to give them one flaw to make sure that they're well-rounded. I know my character's too trusting. My character is too nice. My character is like, give them actually something that would actually hurt them in like social or like dangerous situations. Like, I don't like, stop it.
Although you can even twist those around. You can say, all right, my character is too nice, and they are like they work in a city full of supervillains, and like their day to day is just them being this unflinching ray of sunshine in a horrible, horrible world, and that in its own can be kind of, was that a flaw then? That's
no.
But man, I want to read it.
I want to make it. I want to read that. Yeah, like, definitely. Also, I just would like to say as an aside, if you have like a character that is like a special snowflake and they're like a self-insert or something, that's fine. Like, have fun, please.
Yeah.
Like, please have fun with your stories. Like, it's fine. It's like, especially if you're making it for yourself, it doesn't matter what other people think. But if you do want to have a like well-rounded, like well-liked character for your main story, just give them a couple flaws. Make them struggle for what they want. Don't make it like, I think the first example I ever saw of like a Mary Sue or like a comic making fun of Mary Sue's was like specifically like, I am a Saiyan princess. I've come to beat Goku and marry Vegeta. Like, that was it. And I'm like, okay, but like, they're having fun, so I don't see the problem here. Yeah, I think it's just avoid not having them have conflict, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'm going to try to say this name, and I hope I don't say it wrong. At Radokin Linieso? Sorry if I butchered your name. Which trait of your protagonist worries you most, and how do you deal with it? Mine, I have one for this. Okay. So my main protagonist, Leadfoot, my biggest worry about her is the fact that she's a girl. Because I've already like had to deal with people like refusing to like accept my word, like, no, I promise she's female. Also, the fact that she is like a female character, and then my other main character, Alias, exists, and he's just like the genuinely likable, funny dude. And every time he's on a page, everyone like ignores everything else that's happening because they like him the best. And so, you know, that thing where people just default don't like female characters because of problems in our society.
Yep.
That is something that I'm actually already dealing with, and that's my biggest fear, is that people will just not care as much about her story, even though it's the most important part of the story, because she's female. But that's mine.
I like Leadfoot. Just want to say that right.
I also like Leadfoot.
Thanks, Brent. I like her too.
Well, without, I guess, touching on any spoiler territory, I'd say the next thing I'd worry most about for my protagonist, Ravi, is her sense of humor sometimes. Like, she's really sarcastic, and it can get a little bit mean-spirited, especially since how this current chapter is going. Because, like, you know, even bandits have feelings too. It's like they're not all just people, and I'm trying to like kind of get that across with some of them. And
you worried about like maybe people like turning against her a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's understandable, but like sometimes I'm like, she's just kidding around, you guys. It's okay.
You know what's interesting? Is both of you guys said things about not necessarily the character themselves, but about audience perception of the character.
That's the biggest. I'm like, I'm not worried about like how she is. Like, I like my character. I'm worried about how audiences will interpret them.
And I was gonna say actually probably the same thing. I was like something along the lines of Jeff. I was like, I think Pam is enough of a kind of like by the book kind of like badass thug with a heart of gold archetype enough that people will root for her. But like especially in this chapter,
Look at this chapter.
she's still also like a callous, abrasive asshole. So, but I think that's really interesting is that we all weren't necessarily worried about the characters ourselves, but how their negative traits would be, or just them existing at all in the case of Leadfoot, would be interpreted by the audience. And
yeah, like I definitely have like I feel like it's like with all like our protagonists, or like, yeah, I like my protagonist. I've made this flawed character that's going to be going through a character journey. Like they're going to go through their story and maybe change throughout it, and I've accepted that, and I like what I have planned for them. But is the audience going to stick it out with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And are they going to like? Yeah, that's actually super interesting. That we have the same problem.
We're worried about audience perception.
I'm not worried about my character being kind of cold and not funny compared to other characters. I'm worried about the audience disliking her for those traits.
And it's like I'm more worried about like my other stories that I have, because like they're kind of all not good people, but Pam is arguably like one of my protagonists who's on the like more good-hearted side of the thing. So it's like I'm testing the waters. Like here's this kind of like rogue with a heart of gold kind of, and then it's like later it's like I hope you guys like these ones too. They're a little darker.
They're a little worse.
Just gets worse and worse throughout my career.
So how would you deal with it then, as the second part of the question?
Oh man, I don't think you can.
You just have to hope that the audience
Trust you.
trusts you.
And we could
don't come at it thinking that like this character's not a precious cinnamon roll, problematic. Like you have to hope that they'll just accept your character for being kind of not perfect.
And we could honestly do like probably a couple episodes on just how audience perception of like and dealing with that sort of thing. Yeah. But I think kind of continuing on from at Sleepy Esper, and they put and tags in the question, and we're gonna I think answer it as though they said pro tags.
Just to stay on theme.
Just to stay on theme. I'm just assuming that it was mix up, but what? I almost said and tags because I was reading it. What pro tags from other media were inspirations for you? Are there any themes or traits that you notice you like from character to character?
I like protagonists that are or my like main protagonists kind of usually tend to be like grumpy, straight-faced, deadpan characters. And then I like to surround them with like wacky friends. Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
We kind of talked about protagonists that we like.
I don't know if other protagonists influence my protagonist, because, like I said, a lot of our favorite characters tend to be supporting cast members. A lot of times I just took archetypes that I liked about like supporting characters and made them the main character.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
I actually had some other media inspiration for at least one of my characters. The blue-bearded stranger is very much inspired by many of the stereotypical cowboy main protagonists that you see in like films and other comics, like the one series with like the trilogy or more movies with like Clint Eastwood, who's very much the silent loner who just kind of comes in and is like, I guess I gotta save the day. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to be here though. And then there's like other characters like the one real I think influential Western figure was John Marston from the Red Dead Redemption game, who's a very well-rounded and deep character and kind of fits in that same archetype, but also kind of you see more of why. And I kind of liked those aspects, and since my comic is very much a Western, it fit very well. But at the same time, I'm not trying to completely follow those steps, and hopefully that'll kind of carry through more as we go on. But I always just liked that character. Maybe it's just because I like the idea of like the one lone guy with his hat and his trench coat walking out in the middle of the street, pistol in hand, is like, I'm gonna deal with this situation best way I know how. I just like that feeling.
With bullets.
With bullets.
I definitely like. I have like supporting cast members and like villains that I can like 100% be like, this is where I got this part of them from, and this is where I got this idea from. But like with my main characters, it's usually like all the like media I've consumed and like grown up with did not have the type of main characters that I could relate to or that I liked. And it made me mad that I didn't like that like people made these like even like they would make like female protagonists or something and they weren't good. Like they're just bad and eye candy. And I'm just like, you know what? Frick you. I'm gonna make a lot of female characters and they're gonna be what I want to see in media. Screw you guys. Like my main characters, the main characters are usually just me doing what I don't see often enough in stories that I wanted to see growing up.
I would say that's a media inspiration right there, yeah.
I think mine are almost always like in a different story, they're bad guys a lot of the times. They're almost always violent, they're almost always selfish, and a lot of times I like stories that take your selfish, violent assholes and either make them into better people or kind of explore how that affects their interactions with other people. But yeah, I'm like kind of like going through the Rolodex of my like main characters right now, and it's a lot of them are usually selfish assholes who are either like kind of like unceremoniously shoved in a situation against their will that changes them for the better or worse.
Yes.
Let's roll on through to this next question.
So at McSpoofy asked, what's a good way to keep your passion going for your protagonist if you like a side character more? And what if you have an ensemble cast with no protagonist? Ooh, I've like talked to friends about this before. If you, I feel this happened to me too. Like you make characters and then you're like, I'm really attached to this one, but they're not the main character. What's stopping you from making them the main character?
I was just gonna say that.
Like, or same thing, if you like make an antagonist and you're like, I'm way more interested in this antagonist than I am like the other characters, make the antagonist the main character. There's nothing stopping you. Like,
Yep.
It's okay to like, you don't have to go like have the default like bland good guy main character just because that's what everybody does or what you're used to seeing. Like you can make your main character like a side, like one of the side characters that's like flawed or like really funny and goofy. Like you can do that. It's fine.
I don't think I can say anything that can build on that. That's like exactly my opinion on the subject. Is like, do I just make this just If you like this character and you're more into that character's like journey and whole thing, just make them the main person.
Although I guess this could be saying like, if you're in the middle of your story and suddenly you like your side character more, how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, you can't just say make your protagonist more interesting. That's very vague and broad. I guess figure out what aspects that you really like, maybe see if you can't add additional traits to your main character.
Let's say, remember whose story it is. Keep in mind why you made them the protagonist in the first place, and why it's their story and not somebody else's.
Like I think everybody has like a example of, you know, you're making your comic or your story and like a side character comes in and they're like instantly likable. like you have known them for 5 minutes and already you're like, I love this character and I love drawing this character. It's okay to like let that happen, and then like, you know, once the scene is over and that character leaves, it's like, okay, this main character is still the main character. Like they were the main character through that whole interaction and they're still the main character now. Like it's okay to have side characters that you personally are like, I really like this side character. Just don't let the side character overtake your main character. Unless that's the point, I guess. But
I accomplished that by having 40 side characters.
Yeah! Make everybody the main character.
It's a revolving door of main characters' interactions with other people.
What if you have an ensemble cast with no one protagonist?
I've been trying to think. I don't know of a lot of like series that actually pull this off.
Yeah, usually it's like there is a central character and then characters in it.
Or at least maybe like 2 or 3. I don't know.
Maybe like Bakano.
Actually, yeah, Bakano does.
Bakano.
You still kind of feel like some of them are like protagonist-y, but Bakano does a really good job of switching through viewpoints. If you have I guess if you have an ensemble cast with no protagonist, you now have to take extra care on which characters you're spending time with.
Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that everybody's relevant on this. Like, if you want to keep in that, like, there is no main character, everybody is the main character.
I guess then you need to find a different central object or topic or feeling that would then carry the story forward, and just all these characters are revolving around that.
Yeah.
I feel like a more interesting thing is multiple protagonists.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's as opposed to being like, here's 10 people and we're going to spend time with each one of their viewpoints. I think it's a lot and like I said, I don't know how many series I've actually watched that I feel pull this off really successfully, because you always feel like someone's the protagonist. I think it's more interesting to be like, we're going to rotate between like 3 kind of main camps, kind of like The Meek, or I guess Game of Thrones fits into this post season 1.
Too Rah kind of does that too.
That's by the same people who did Bakano, right?
Yeah, it's like kind of an ensemble cast, and it's more leans towards there's just a lot of main characters rather than it's just an ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, if you want to see a good example of good ensemble cast with no like real main character, though, go watch Bakano if you have. Also, just a genuinely really good.
I was gonna say, honestly, if you just haven't seen Bakano, go watch Bakano and go watch it in the English dub.
Watch the English dub. Only time I will say watch English dub.
I was gonna say, I can't tell you how many times I've had like a person say like, I tried watching Bakano and I couldn't get into it. I was like, well, were you watching it like dubs or subs? It was like, well, subtitles, of course. It's like, no, you gotta watch Bakano with the dub.
You gotta have those accents, man. Like,
it sells it so well.
It really does. Man, I hope everyone is getting as many like anime recommendations as they are advice for writing your protagonist.
Yeah, I know. We're just like, ooh, this one and that one.
Oh man,
we're just a bunch of nerds. Sorry.
Bunch of nerds with excellent taste.
Is this an anime podcast or a webcomic podcast?
Dang it! Freaking dang it!
Hey! You got to take in other forms of media to inform your own.
True.
Yeah, this is true. Okay. I think this one kind of sort of ties into the last question, but from @FeatheryHeather, is it possible to make a protag as interesting as side characters? And are there drawbacks to having a protag with a strong personality? A lot of protags seem to follow the generic hero trait template.
And it's a shame that they do!
Isn't it just...
I have such... I hate it.
I was telling Jeff before we started this, I was like, man, I can't wait to like rag on the Chosen One trope. And like, this is me officially like staking my flag. I cannot stand the Chosen One trope. I can't stand your Luke Skywalkers, your Harry Potters. It feels like it like detracts from the entire narrative. You're kind of, the hero's journey is a thing because on some level it works. Your Neos, I guess. but I feel like it detracts from the work that they do in the story. I don't know.
It was meant to be. Of course you were going to succeed. You're the chosen one. You're like, what? I worked hard for this. Shut up.
I don't know if there's like a protagonist with a strong enough personality that like I didn't like. I'm trying to think right now of like, is there a protagonist with like a really strong personality that like it ended up detracting from the narrative? And like, no, man, that just like. The hero's journey is, like I said, it's a thing because it's been around forever, and on some level it does work, but they're often like, I don't come away from those really into the main character ever. Those aren't protagonists that I like at all.
See, this is something that it sucks. So I do watch a lot of anime, and usually in modern anime, there's a lot of like the black-haired, blue-eyed main character that is like a loaf of bread. They are so boring. It's like they're just there to be like, I'm cool and I'm like pretty good at what I do, and everyone else is not, like, aspires to be me and aspires to make out with me, you know, like, and that's the whole point of that character, is just to be like a face for you to like insert yourself into the story. And then every other character, all the supporting casts are infinitely more interesting because that's where the creators were allowed to put their like love and like ideas and imaginations into it, because they have to sell this series, so they make a really boring character that is just like your bread and butter. You can relate to this character in some way because they aren't anything that like isn't you.
Yep.
You know, and so then you like the side characters much more, and the way you have that not happen is don't do that. Like, let your main character be interesting. Let it be interesting to you. If you don't like your main character, why are you making this story?
Yep, exactly. Your main character shouldn't feel like a bubble you gotta fill out on your sheet. It's like, oh, I gotta have my main character. I gotta have this like bland loaf of bread person. Like,
yep. They have to get the girl, and they have to be good at sword fighting and have cool eyes and magic. I'm like, no, stop it. make the supporting cast, make that character, make their supporting cast, and then take that main character, throw him in the garbage, and then make one of your supporting cast members their main character.
Yes.
If that's what you have to do that.
And don't make them just visually interesting. That's not going to change anything. Make them actually interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. A nice anime hairstyle is not going to be the main character.
Cool hair, just not a protagonist make. Unless they're a Yu-Gi-Oh protagonist. In which case, I think it does.
It's required. But yeah, like, like, a lot of protags being like the same like generic hero template, that's people being boring. It doesn't have to be that way, even though it's the majority of what you see on television and in movies. It doesn't need to be that way. You can make it whatever you want. The sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of really strong feelings about boring protagonists.
Yeah, dude. Like, make your protagonist a giant asshole.
Do it.
But also make them
link
interesting.
It to me. Like, link them to me and I will love them. Like.
Alright, y'all. Last question. From @DemonDiceCow. What sort of protagonist character do you not see much of but really appreciate when you do? Like a breath of fresh air.
Jerks.
Yeah, I think if the last like 45 minutes or so have proved anything, it's that like we really want to see stories with jerks as the main character. Breaking Bad, I think, is one of the things I'm thinking of that got close enough to making its protagonist also the antagonist. I think that's really good. I just really love Breaking Bad.
I really like just seeing, I mean, for example, right now, I just read the manga series Noragami. It's really good. You should check it out. There's my recommendation. It's really good, and I weirdly got super attached to the main girl character in that series, which does not usually happen with me and like anime and manga, because the girls are not treated like characters, they're just like pretty and there, you know? But she's like full of like energy, and she's like tough, and she likes wrestling, and like it's just, she's so funny, and I was like, I love you. I would die for this girl. And it was so... It like was so fresh to me, because I'm like, I haven't seen a character be treated like this in a really long time. It's been 1,000 years, you know. I just really like it when characters are allowed to be goofy, or they're allowed to be like dumb too. Like the protagonists messing up and making mistakes and struggling, being kind of bad people, because that's more relatable than like a perfect chosen one that's instantly good at everything they do and touch, you know?
Love those moral compromises.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff?
Come back to me.
Alright, I'm trying to think of
Like favorite, because I'm just still thinking about like favorite. I'm like looking at all my like comics on the shelf and stuff, and
Me
I'm like,
too.
which one of these is like a main character that really jumps out at me? I really love. I really. Oh man, the Transformers comic, More Than Meets the Eye, I guess that's also got like a really big ensemble cast, but you can Rodimus is kind of like the main character, and he's like just so like into himself and his own like journey. I love that a lot. I don't think there's a lot of protagonists out there who are just like, oh god, there's like I think a conversation I have saved where he's having with like Drift, and is talking about like, oh, how deep down it's like a really, like, I'm a really good person, and it's like, yeah, but deep down even further than that, you don't really like, you're really just all about yourself. And he's like, well, yeah. And that was kind of like a beautiful moment. I really like, I don't know, I appreciate how like kind of like vain Rodimus is. I think that's, but that also works because there's also like 20 supporting characters in that story, and it's following multiple plot lines, and like Rodimus isn't carrying the narrative, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just over here sweating nervously trying to think.
Come on, buddy.
I don't, it's like I take media in like in small chunks, and I usually am the one catching up on everything else, so it's like everyone else is like, oh yeah, I already know about this, I already know about that. I'm like, I'm just back here like, oh, I'm still catching up, you guys, I'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my shelf, and my eyes keep getting drawn to my first volume of My Hero Academia, and
Yeah, I've read the first couple chapters of
I
that. Really like the main character.
Yeah, I thought about bringing up Deku.
I am only on chapter 10.
Well, I mean,
I don't know where he goes.
Well, I mean, by then you know how he's like all, his whole kind of character arc is whether or not he can kind of follow in All Might's legacy and also stand out as his own character, which I think is interesting. Deku himself isn't like, he's not bland. I think he like just passes that bar of interesting protagonist. Mm-hmm. For me at least, because it feels like a lot of his other like his conflicts come from like outside. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too deep into like Boku no Hero Academia opinions.
I need to read it myself.
Yeah, I think we've named like 11 different series or something ridiculous over the course of this like last hour.
I really like, they're the main character, and everything you're seeing is from their point of view, and so you take it as truth, and then it's like revealed, this person was an unreliable narrator the whole time. Those kind of stories and those kind of characters are really cool. Looking at, no spoilers, but like Final Fantasy VII.
I actually don't like the unreliable narrator.
Really?
Trope. Yeah, you're kind of
I have a conflicting opinion, Brent.
You're again, spoilers, but like everything I've read by Brian Lee O'Malley thus far, I don't know, it kind of I don't know, it can make things really confusing depending on how you do it. I think doing a like at the end it was like it was all this was going on. I'm more okay with that than like a unreliable narrator where you're second guessing what's happening the whole time sort of dealy.
Okay.
Like amongst that first clues where you're like maybe this main character isn't seeing things how they really are sort of deal, and that just kind of, in my opinion, like muddies the narrative and makes things really hard to follow.
That's fair.
Love me some twists though. I could do a big end twist. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest type that I do, like, you don't see a lot of it, is just like honestly like morally gray, like kind of jerk characters. Like my favorite, like right now, my favorite protagonist, or one of my favorite protagonists in anything, is Johannes Cabal. That book series, and nobody like reads them. I need everybody to go read those books because that's my favorite protagonist in anything.
What? There we go.
Is Johannes Cabal the Necromancer the first book in that series?
Yes.
Man, that has been sitting on my shelf staring at me for like a long ass. I read it forever ago. I didn't know there was more, and I was like, huh, okay.
There's so many books, and like that is a character that he is a jerk. If you're looking for an example of a jerk who is still someone you root for, that's it. He is so good. Like, he is a likable jerk, and he has like an incredible amount of character development. And also, it's just a freaking really funny story. It's like dark humor.
Yeah.
It's about like.
Remember that.
It's good. It's a good series.
Yes.
Please read it. He's my favorite protagonist of all time. Like, my number one. I'm sad that it's like something that isn't super well known.
I did think he was a breath of fresh air when I started reading it.
Ain't it so? He's so good.
So good and bad. Yes.
There's like 5 books. 6,
It's also written very well.
Yes.
Very well. Keeps
like
you engaged.
That's like the biggest breath of fresh air protagonist I've seen in time, is that character. And I'm sorry that it's like a book that's kind of hard to get your hands on.
What do you mean there's no pictures in this thing?
Read a book, dang it!
It's just words in here.
Just read a book!
Use your imagination.
Oh, man. And then later acquire the rights to do a comic on it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Jonathan L. Howard, if you're listening, let me do a graphic novel for your books.
Okay. Do we want to, let's slap one more recommendation on top of this, like, episode where we just talked about things we liked. I hope it was good audio. But Jeff, I believe you had the webcomic recommendation of the week?
I do. Ooh, sorry, I'm going to come down from that. Right. So, my webcomic recommendation this week is a webcomic called Wildlife, and that's with an E at the end of wild, by a Pascal Lepas? I think I'm saying that right. Probably not. I'm sorry. And it's a comic on Hiveworks, and it's fairly new. I mean, it came out, I think, maybe not last year. Maybe it was the year before. It's up to like 5 chapters now. It just still feels recent in my mind's eye because I caught it on it very early on. It's a story that follows a character who's a journalist named Oscar Wilde. Not the actual writer Oscar Wilde.
No relation.
Oscar Wilde.
No relation.
No relation whatsoever. Who decided to move to a small town in Oklahoma, where weird things start happening. Like, for instance, the house he rents is haunted by a ghost from like World War I, named Sylvia, who's just been there forever. And then also has a werewolf best friend named Clifford, the big red werewolf. And it's definitely kind of getting more and more into that as it's gone on. And it's actually drawing from Native American mythology in a lot of places, which is very interesting. I don't think that's touched on very often. And I've just been really enjoying this cast of protagonists a lot. I really enjoy watching them interact and kind of just have really funny little moments, or actually when they start talking about more serious stuff, like things going on with Clifford or stuff with Sylvia, or why maybe Oscar's moving out here into the middle of nowhere, not telling any of his family why or where he is. And it's just become very, very interesting to kind of pick apart and puzzle together who these characters are and why they're doing the things they're doing, and what the overall story is what's actually gonna happen, because we're starting to get into some more plotty stuff now, and I'm really excited to see what's gonna happen. And artistically, it's just a beautiful comic.
It's a very pretty comic.
It's very. I don't know how she does it, but those backgrounds are amazing.
So good.
And this week, I am the host who hasn't read the comic.
Oh, the turntables.
You should read it. You should read it. I think what really drew me to it, beyond just my friend recommending to me, was the fact that it's kind of got that small town feel to it, which is kind of very reminiscent to where I live right now. I kind of live out, in the woods, in the very cold upper north of Wisconsin, and it's very much lots of small towns here. So there's always everybody, and then sometimes when something weird happens, you're like, what's going on? Oh, except in my case, it's usually boring and nothing interesting. But in this case, it's very interesting, and it gets very creepy. So I definitely think you should read it. So that's my webcomic recommendation for the week.
All right.
Thank you.
I hope I told you.
Go read Wildlife. I think that's gonna do it for us this week. I think anytime we get into an episode that's gonna be about writing any type of character, it might just turn into things we like about other series, which I'm all right with. I like talking about anime with my friends.
The best way to explain this kind of thing is by example. So you're just gonna get a lot of recommendations.
Yeah. Go read and watch everything we talked about, and come back to us next week with a report on my desk by next Saturday.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go write that right now. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Go watch 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. Go watch Overlord. Go watch all of One Piece.
All of One Piece in the next week.
Yeah, 700 episodes. Chop chop.
Go.
Until then, I've been Brent.
I've been Amber.
And I've been Jeff.
And we do this for free. Jeff, who's gonna play us out this week?
He's already gone.
I have to find a new guy.